I'm Amie.
And we are the Movement Ninjas. We're bringing you chapter 1 of Warrior 2 right now. So I'm going to go through some of the cues and explain, and Amie is going to demonstrate for us here. So Amie's going to start off by stepping out nice and wide. And hands go in the space if you find your hip pointers, and then you find a little bit higher, or a little bit lower, sorry, where the bulk of your quad begins. Find kind of that crease right in between those two spots. And all you're going to start to do is sway your hips from side to side. Really important, as we mentioned before, that pelvis bum isn't tucked and the muscles in your glutes, all those deep rotators, aren't clenched and you're not tucking your tailbone under. You really want to feel this really delicious feeling of the heads of your femurs really gliding on top of your pelvis. So really it's an abduction and adduction moment here. Just loosening up through the hips, the rest of your body is really relaxed. Now from here, come sway yourself back into neutral so you're not abducted or adducted. And what I'm going to have you do is pure external rotation of this left leg here. So notice if the foot or the knee wants to drive, and see if you can really get the turnout from the upper thigh bone, the femur in the head of the socket. Now from here, we're going to play with that same oscillation movement into abduction and adduction, being really mindful to keep the upper body nice and quiet. And it's really common once you run into a snag or a block in the hip that the upper body tenses up or tries to do too much. So really be honest with yourself of where does that movement, that gliding, feel really nice and yeah, like a glide as opposed to a pushing through. So from here, as Amie comes back, she's going to stay there now, and then she's just going to play with sinking this left hip down as her left knee bends. So from here, she's thinking of a crease happening at the front of her hip here as she sinks down. Knee comes directly over top of the foot. If you're finding that your knee falls in, that probably means that you don't have as much range turning out in your hip as you think you might do. Again, all of these movements should feel really smooth and essentially easy. And if you're trying to force your way into something, then as a physio I can tell you that's usually why I see people in the clinic from injuries. So just oscillating between these two, feeling like this hip is dropping straight down and you're getting a nice crease in this hip as opposed to all the muscles in the quad wanting to help out. Thinking about the femur dropping straight down and even getting a bit of a posterior glide into the socket as there's hip flexion and the knee flexes as well. So from here, once you find a spot that you can stay in and that your upper body hasn't tensed up or you haven't extended through your spine, what you're going to do is inhale, flow your arms up to shoulder height. Really staying nice and lengthened out through the crown of your head without extending your spine. Again, effortless effort. And you can finish your Warrior 2 by sending your gaze over your middle finger of your left middle finger. So, stay tuned for chapter 2 of Warrior 2, where we explore how the hands and the arms and the shoulders can play into making your warrior extra ferocious.
That's great. I love it. Extra ferocious. I didn't hear a beep. Did it come?
It's when that red light is flashing.
Hi, I'm Amie.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are the Movement Ninjas. And this is the second chapter of Warrior 2, the Fierce Warrior. Okay, so Sarah's going to start just kind of going back through a little bit what we were playing with in chapter 1 of Warrior 2. So she's gliding the hips from side to side, kind of just re-evaluating where your leg bone is in space. I know it sounds kind of silly, but we can get so upper body dominant that we literally forget how to feel certain spaces in our body. And one of the spaces that we tend to forget is the hips and the leg bone moving and articulating freely in the hip joint. So bring yourself back to chapter 1 if you want a revision of what we're playing with here. She's just going to do it a couple of times, just moving precisely here where the leg bone comes into the pelvis. And now she's going to externally rotate the front leg, preparing for her Fierce Warrior 2. So again, really pure here, leg bone rotating. Her spine is really relaxed, her neck's really relaxed, she's soft through her breath, and then she's just going to drop down into her Warrior 2. And I kind of paused at the drop down because there's a really subtle but kind of important difference between a grab and a drive forward with the torso and a drop down into the leg. So you can kind of play with that. So Sarah's just adjusting herself, which is something that's really important to do. And she's just going in and out of Warrior 2. Now where we're playing with the fierce component, we're just having fun with that. But we think it's really cool. Now Sarah's going to float her arms up, like you do in your Warrior 2. And she's playing with, whilst there's a certain amount of work here, there's also, you can see she's pretty relaxed. So now Sarah is going to lead from the thumbs, and she's going to start to spiral the arms up, so palms come towards facing the ceiling. They might not to start with, and then she's spiraling them back. And when you play with this, there's two things that we want you to think about. The first is that you don't pile through it. The second is that you're really aware, because there is soft tissue, lines of muscle, anatomy trains, whatever you want to call it, cool stuff to feel, from the tips of your fingers all the way spiraling, all the way through your arm bone and into the shoulder girdle. So honor where the snags are. It's really common if you do a one-sided movement, like whether you're a waitress or you're a tennis player or you're sitting on the computer using your mouse with the right. It's really common that one side feels a little different and is a little bit more snagged than the other. So really go slow and easy and feel this juicy feeling that comes all the way up into the trunk. Notice if it stops here or it stops here, and keep it really harmonious and congruent all the way from the tips of your fingers and this first joint, your wrist, all the way into the shoulder blade. Don't hold there for too long. And if you happen to do that, just notice what starts to kick in, but then very quickly come out. And relax completely, bring yourself out of your Warrior 2, and make sure you do the other side. Thanks for watching.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, here's what